Welcome to another episode of Living with FASD, a human interest and educational show for those of us who are impacted with prenatal alcohol exposure, our families and loved ones, anyone else that wants to learn by someone who has both professional and living experience with FASD. This morning, I would like to welcome to the mic Miss Shannon Butt, who is a member of the Adult Leadership Collaboration of the FASD Changemakers. And that is such a fantastic group. We've had a couple of their members on before, and it's always so exciting to host them on Living with FASD. Good morning, Shannon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Morning.
Tell me a little bit about your story, right? How old were you when you were diagnosed, and what was that process like for you of coming to terms with it? And then eventually, how did you end up being part of the ALC?
Thank you so much. This is wonderful. I had a late diagnosis. I've only gotten my diagnosis in the last couple of years, so in my early 30s. Okay. I was really lucky. My stepmom works with kids with FASD, kids with autism. She works in the school board with like high needs kids. And so it was actually her that said to my dad that I had these characteristics of the kids that she was working with. And could there have been drinking during conception and pregnancy? And the answer was yes. And where I had just spent like for as long as I could remember, like since I was a teenager, on and off of antidepressants and trying to figure out what was wrong with me. There was this this inner knowing that something wasn't right. And so when my dad and my stepmom, I'll refer to them probably as my parents, but she's not my biological mom. Not that makes me love her any less. Right. And so her name's Karen, and my dad's names are also Karen and Earl. Sat me down and said, we think this is a possibility, and they already went ahead and set up a meeting with an FASD specialist, a therapist who I've now been seeing for like a couple of years. And all of that sort of happened while I was getting sober. So all of these like things were happening at once.
A lot of moving parts.
So many moving parts. Yeah. I'm still feeling like I'm in recovery from all of the things.
Okay. So, just a couple background questions, and not that it makes a whole lot of difference. It's probably just the social worker in me. You identify Karen very much as mom. How old were you when your family dynamics changed?
I don't ever remember my bio mom and bio dad being together.
Okay.
I believe I was like a year and a half when they split.
Okay.
Dad was military. Mom, I guess went to go live closer to her mom, and her mom had relocated. Yeah, I don't ever remember them being together. And bio mom is still a drinker. Okay. And still very much struggling in addiction.
Yeah. So, the drinking tends to be generational. Do you know much about her side of the family? Was her mother also drinking? So there's a possibility your mom also has FASD.
I absolutely think my mom also has FASD. Yeah. It was like when FASD was presented to me, it ticked off all of these boxes that were still left with question marks after like more than 15 years of trying to figure out my mental health. Mm-hmm. And it ticked off her boxes too. Like for years, my sister and I would like, not that we were trying to diagnose her, but we were like, something is so wrong with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, and that, does that help you to not hold a grudge toward her?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that helps with the compassion piece,
Yeah.
like, hugely.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I and
And
then
that's,
when I was able to find compassion for myself is when I also then was able to, like, have it for other people.
yeah. Yeah. And that's important, not just for your general well-being, because, grudges and resentment, they don't hurt the person we're angry with. They only hurt ourselves,
Yeah,
but also for your recovery. It's
yes,
a huge piece of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, recovery is a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
I know that this will be a battle that I have for life, and it gets easier every year, it gets easier every day. Um, yeah, sobriety has been a
Yeah.
true gift.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful to hear. So, were you raised by your dad then?
Nope. Was raised with bio mom until about grade 8.
Hmm.
Dad retired from the military and moved closer so that me and my sister could go live with him.
Okay.
Um, but at that point, the trauma was
There. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was there, and he was dealing with his own PTSD from the military.
Yeah.
Um, and so I found a friend in alcohol. I can remember being 6 or 7 and my mom showing me how to open a beer bottle and me being like so proud that my hands were strong enough to open it. And if
Wow.
I went to the garage and got her beer for her and opened it, I was allowed to take a sip before I gave it to her. Um, and
That's an
so
early start.
it was an early start, a
Yeah.
really early start.
Yeah. And then one sip turned into more,
Yep.
right?
I was only 12 when I started stealing alcohol and drinking with my friends.
Yeah.
Um, I can remember nights like my friend's mom driving me back to my house and me just like throwing up everywhere and lying and saying that I had food poisoning. I was still in like grade 7 and grade 8 at this point. And mom obviously knowing that I didn't have food poisoning, that it was booze. Um, but nobody did anything.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, it's normal. This is normal stuff that kids experiment with. No,
Yeah.
it is absolutely not. We do
Yeah.
not have every single child getting drunk off their parents' supply. No,
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah. Yeah.
no.
So you were in your 30s when your dad and mom came to you
Yeah.
and said, "We think maybe." Yeah.
Yeah, and
How did you respond to that?
well, I was like freshly sober. I had approached them and told them that I was struggling with cocaine and alcohol. Um, and then we kind of thought that I would get sober and that a lot of these problems would go away. The like problems that I was having, the big emotions. And, I thought once my nervous system was like regulated from all of the alcohol,
Yeah.
that like I would calm down. And I so obviously didn't. And then that's when they came and said, like this could be the answer for
Hmm.
what's happening to you. And I've gotten so many diagnoses in my life, and this is the only one where I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." The
Yeah.
rest of them I was like, "No, that's not it." I
Yeah.
I just know that that's not it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um and this is the one, and this is why I think diagnosis is so important if it's the right diagnosis.
Yes.
Um because like, okay, getting so many wrong diagnoses was really it really messed up my like inner dialogue, my perception that I had as myself as a person,
Yeah.
um my sense of identity. And then having this diagnosis of FASD basically just made me feel like, oh, okay, this isn't my fault.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
I made some poor choices, like that, but I made those choices not even knowing the hand that I had been dealt.
Right.
Once I once I figured out the hand that I had been dealt, I was able to make better choices.
Yeah. That makes such a big difference. So with those handfuls, you know, excuse me, and I'm certainly not asking you to share all these diagnoses, but with all those diagnoses, I'm assuming there came a whole litany of different prescriptions.
Yeah.
And what was the impact of those prescriptions, which turned out not to be needed?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm like, I'm just titrating down off of 2 meds that I've been on for more than 10 years. I'm at max dose of both. I remember going to my GP and saying, you know, I'm still not feeling I'm still not feeling the way that I like think I should be on these meds. And every time my GP would just be like, we'll up you 5 mg, we'll up you 5 mg. So now my body is totally, and they're not even really, oh, did
You
I
just,
freeze?
you did. So the last thing I heard was now my body.
So now my body was dependent on, you know, these medications that I'm now trying to get off of. But my body's known them for like more than 15 years. So
Mhm.
there's that. And then I remember this one prescription that I got that made me suicidal. And that was the scariest 24 hours of my entire life.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I've had meds that have like made me throw up, that have made me a zombie, that have made me not be able to feel my emotions.
yeah.
Um, and even still, we're having doctors like, I just had a psychiatrist appointment last month, and the psychiatrist said, I don't think you have FASD. FASD isn't really a diagnosis.
Well, he's technically correct. It's the umbrella over top of 4 or 5 other diagnoses.
And I was like, sir, I just spent the last 2 years getting this diagnosis.
Uh-huh.
I'll be leaving now.
Yeah, good call. It's amazing to me how many, you know, with all the misinformation out there, it's amazing to me how many professionals don't know what they're talking about. You know, I face the same issue in a couple different areas, you know, like with my type 1 diabetes. I have providers wanting to treat me as if I had type 2 because, hello, I'm 60. So obviously it's type 2. No. Or with my mom's dementia. You know, she's got Lewy body, which is misdiagnosed as often as FASD is. You know, it's the second most common form of dementia, and yet it's rarely, it always takes years to get a
Wow.
proper diagnosis. And it boggles my mind. You know, we're in 2023. Hello.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you know, in the defense of the professionals, and all the MDs everywhere, if they're not taught it in school,
Yeah.
then they're not going to know to look for it.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many things to learn. You can only take so many CEUs every year. So, but it really highlights the work we have cut out for us to do
Yeah.
to raise awareness of fetal alcohol spectrum and, you know, really provide that education to the professionals as well as the layperson. So I'm so grateful that you got that education and
Yeah.
you were able to recognize, yeah, no, this is not the provider for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as people who already have to work so hard to
Mhm.
advocate, that just like it adds another layer and another
It's
barrier.
another obstacle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. You know, you mentioned that one of the meds brought out suicidal thinking. And certainly we see that, you know, with all the commercials for medications now. For antidepressants, one of the side effects is suicidality. Go figure.
Yeah, I know.
Um, but the statistics for FASD and suicide are alarming.
Yes.
there are
Absolutely.
so many of us that choose that as an option because, out of our desperation. And it's curious to me how much of that might be caused by the wrong medications.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very scary place to be.
Hmm. Yeah. How did you get through that year?
Luckily, it was only a day, only 24 hours that I was on that medication, and then
Okay.
I never took it again. But I did
One dose.
one dose.
Oh, good golly.
Yeah, yeah. So I just never took it again.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it didn't. It was not happy in my brain at all.
Yeah.
I did have a suicide attempt in 2016. Um, and I still like, man, passive suicidal thoughts is still something that I like deal with on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Um, even like, I was away on the weekend traveling, and that's the first time I've traveled in like years.
Hmm.
And it was really hard on my body. And so now I've been recovering this week,
Yeah.
and and my head has said like, this is your life forever, this is too hard.
Hmm.
You can't keep going like this, like you have to end it. um and it's like it's incredibly hard to, like, I know now that I'm in control of my inner dialogue, and so it's up
Yeah.
to me to rewrite that and like flip the perspective.
Yeah.
um but I don't know how, like, I don't know how people do it and work a full-time job. Like, I sleep like I have a full-time job. Like, I I'll sleep 12 hours a night and then nap 4 a day
Yeah.
when I'm like that. And we don't have a room in our society for people like me, right? Where we need so much rest and we need to slow down so much, and everybody around us is still hustling.
Yeah. Yeah. Our society is so fast paced. It's not healthy for
Yeah.
anybody, even
No.
for neurotypical people. You
Yeah.
know, the people whose brains are wired the way they were supposed to be, will still burn themselves out
Yeah.
the way that we're fast paced.
Yeah.
Um, I struggle with that also, and with part time work, as a social worker, that never feels too part time.
Right.
Phone never stops. Trying to build a business, writing, just writing the book and launching that, doing the podcast, caring for my mother, and it just goes on and on and on. Um, so sometimes we don't make the best decisions in that.
Yeah.
you know, uh, Case in point, I got myself a new puppy. Why?
Yay, puppies.
So I have to remind myself in the morning when I'm in the middle of the night when I'm propping toothpicks to hold my eyes open to take them out for a potty break. You chose this.
Yes, that's a good reminder.
You
That's a good
chose
reminder.
this. But self-care is, it's critical for anybody.
Yeah.
There's these cute little sayings, you can't pour from an empty cup. But even though it has become a platitude of sorts, it's still very much true, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One of my favorite memes that I've seen is, the symbol for your battery when the battery's way down, but it has that drawing and then the outline of a person with the red bar just at the feet and ankles. And it's like,
Mhm.
you wouldn't let your batteries get that low on your equipment. Why do you let yourself get that rundown?
Yes, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's hard work. And I think that's one of the things about excuse me, one of the things about FASD that nobody really appreciates unless they're living it or know someone that does is, how much extra work it takes just to do anything. When I was in my facets training, we learned about changing our thought patterns and how much physical work that is. The way our neural pathways are, it is up to us to set our inner dialogue and to choose other interpretations. But it takes physical work to lay those new neural pathways down, because by instinct, it's kind of like driving somewhere that you've gone, a gazillion times. You could do it without paying attention. And we joke that the car's on autopilot.
Yeah.
Right. But our brain does the same thing, which is one of the reasons we find ourselves doing the same things over and over again. It's hard work. And one of the other things I learned that feels very, very true, at least in my case, a healthy brain is 2% of our body weight, but it sucks up 25% of our energy load.
Wow.
So it's a gas hog, in other words, right? Our brains are a gas hog, and that's, I think, the way it should be, because our brains do so freaking much for us. They need that fuel. But when our neural pathways have detours all over the place, because there are missing links, because, we have to work so much harder to do anything, cognitively, that it really sucks that power down, which is why we have things like, being run down and walking around with that battery depleted if we're not eating something nutritious every 2 hours, if we're not hydrating appropriately. Those things are critical.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I had to really work to change my inner dialogue. It would say things like, you should be able to do this. Why is this taking you so long?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this so hard for you? It's not this hard for other people. I ultimately had to give that voice a name and recognize that wasn't me. That wasn't my authentic self. That was the voice of somebody who raised me, who spoke to their own selves that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. It wasn't for me. And I had to change I was like, okay, if I was had a person outside of me that could console me in every hard situation, what would that person sound like? And they'd sound a lot like the way that I talk to small children. Like, hey, baby girl, what's going on today? Tell me where it feels hard. Can we breathe through this together?
Yeah.
I am so much more compassionate with my language to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I just will collapse under that
weight. Under the weight. Yeah. But so in your case, it did mimic the voice of a particular person, right? I'm guessing your mom. But really, it's internalizing the voice of everybody in those young years, because we got those same messages from our teachers. We got those same messages from our peers, from all the adults, all the big people. And, kids are so cruel to those deemed different, and you can only hear that voice and those words for so long without internalizing them and placing that judgment upon ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why early diagnosis is so important, because it gives us the liberty to say, don't talk to me that way, right? To everybody. But if that's hidden, if what's going on with us remains hidden, we end up internalizing all those voices, which is another thing that leads to that shame spiral and eventual suicidality and the depression and the anxiety. So there's tremendous, do you have on and off days where some days things are clicking and other days, not so much?
Every day this week has been an off day for me. So So I like have been sober from cocaine and alcohol for years now. But I've recently just quit smoking weed.
Mhm.
And so I have no doubt that my body is going through withdrawal from that. And I've just been having these wild dreams. And when I wake up in the morning, I feel like I haven't slept.
Yeah.
And so every day
Sleep
this,
without rest is such a tease, isn't it?
oh my God, that's why I took like something to help me sleep last night.
Yeah.
And now today I just feel like a zombie. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely have off days,
Yeah.
more than I'd like.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. But, I think that's one of the pieces for us that generates anxiety, right?
Yes.
I think about being a small child, and for you and me, it's pulling up memories. But being a small child and, as you get up in the morning thinking, am I going to be able to, answer questions in class today?
Hmm.
Or am I not going to be able to remember things today?
Mhm.
And for us as adults, we have that same basic question for whatever we're doing for a living. Are we going to struggle to find our words today? Are we going to be able to do this? Is it going to be easy or hard for us? And it can, that in itself can be crazy making.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely I can. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel that like, and then because then you have an off day, and so your emails start to pile up, but then your emails piling up contributes to you having another off day, and it
Mhm.
just becomes this mountain. That's where
Yeah.
I'm feeling like I'm at right now. Like there's just like a mountain waiting for me, and I don't feel like I'm capable of
Yeah.
doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's another one of the things that plagues us, right? Is the inability to either get started with something or to finish something, and I think a lot of that is tied up with perfectionism.
Yeah.
We want to do things well. We've most of us have always been people pleasers, right?
Yes,
We
absolutely.
and who doesn't want praise? Praise is always better than punishment, eh?
Yeah.
But if we doubt our ability to do something well, it's easy to put off doing of it, you
Yeah,
know, and to get started, and then things mount up and just become overwhelming.
absolutely.
Yeah. So organization is hard.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you have done, Shannon, to help you since you're not self-medicating anymore? What has been helpful for you as you've kind of been learning, what these struggles are for truly what they are, and just a symptom or characteristic of the FASD? What other than being compassionate towards yourself, what has been helpful for you?
I love post-it notes um and colored markers.
Hmm.
I I will like cover my walls and everything in just like reminders, quotes that I hear that resonate with me.
Hmm.
um I keep a document in my phone called For When It's Hard.
Oh,
And I've just added bullet points to
yeah.
this living document of like stories that I've heard that make me feel more normal.
Hmm.
Um, um, there's like lots of like quotes and affirmations and exercises that I can go do, like breathing exercises. Because when you're in those hard moments, like my those hard moments, like I
You just froze again.
shoot.
When you're in the hard moments, you
When I'm in the hard moments, it's harder to recall the things that are going to help you. So keeping a document in my phone called For When It's Hard,
Yeah,
that's a really helpful thing to me.
I love
Um,
that.
Creating a support network that
Mhm.
now these are things that have helped me in FASD as well as sobriety. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to get and stay sober if it wasn't for these little Post-it notes that I have around my house that say things like, if you don't want to slip, don't go where it's slippery.
Yeah.
and let's see what else. The support network. Yep. Making sure that I have friends in my life who respect my boundaries, who don't want me to stay up late and watch movies with them when I like to go to bed at 8:30.
Yeah.
People who don't drink. Like I really had to change my friend group.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have people in my life anymore that like drink. What else? Trying to move my body. Even when I'm feeling like I want to just stay frozen and do nothing, I at least can go walk my dog, and just a little bit of movement helps.
Yeah. I had one of those moments this morning when I was really not wanting to peel myself off the mattress. And I just quietly said, God, you're going to have to do something to help me here. And so he got the puppy to start whining. Like, I won't get up for myself, but I'll get up for the puppy.
I resonate with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But having that support network of people who understand you is
critical.
Yeah. Yes.
So are there who or what groups in the FASD circles have been really helpful for you?
Well, the Changemakers, of course. That was pretty incredible. Like just hearing about them, hearing that there are people out there doing this advocacy work on like an international stage. Just learning about FASD and learning that it's still not even recognized as I have a frog in my throat. Still not even recognized as a disability in some places.
Yeah.
It was just infuriating. And yeah, I really have this drive inside that says like, this was so hard for me, this whole journey, and it doesn't have to be that hard for other people. And that sort of like that inner drive has kept me going.
Yeah. So how did you hear about the Changemakers? What was your introduction to that group?
So funny enough, my therapist brought them up. She was like, this is a group that's doing advocacy work. I think you'd be a really great like addition to their team. Pardon me. And so she sent me their information, and I reached out to them, and they already had my name on a list of people to contact because they saw me speak at an online conference.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
So that was like meant to be.
So you live in Canada, is that right?
Yes. Yep, in Ontario.
Okay. And do they have many other people in that region, or are you like the ALC rep for that part of the world?
I'm the ALC rep for this part of the world. Yep. The other Canadian reps that we have are in British Columbia, so on the other side of the country.
Okay. All right.
Yep. So I rep Ontario.
So I don't know my geography for Canada all that well. I in my mind's eye, I can see like Niagara because I've been to Niagara Falls. Where are you, like northeast of there, northwest of there?
I don't know what those directions. I'm geographically challenged.
Okay.
But I'm probably only, I don't know, 4 hours from Niagara.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
So what all are you doing for the ALC in Ontario?
So right now, just basically anything that we are doing within our region, we just let the ALC know, and they like keep it updated on the website so
Okay.
that if people are checking out the website, they can find the ALC representative in their region and like see what they have going on.
Okay.
I just got hooked up. I just did a speech at Ottawa City Hall for the Red Shoes Rocks
Nice.
walk that we
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
And just got another email this morning that they want me to come and
Oh, you froze again. You got an email that invited you to come and what?
do something else with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, with Ottawa City Hall, and it's a place called Health Nexus. And I think it focuses a little bit more on like education, which is very exciting.
Yeah, truly, truly. That's awesome. So how long have you been part of the ALC?
Maybe like 6 months now.
Okay.
So we're pretty busy planning for the Seattle conference.
Yeah.
So I'll be there in I believe it's April.
Okay.
Um,
And
the spring.
hopefully your travel there will not be as difficult as your
Yes.
your last week's traveling. So
Yeah. No, I think just like travel in general is difficult.
mhm, mhm,
um the sensory overload is a lot.
yeah.
Um
And
but
all the unpredictability,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
like my flight home just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. And it just, it makes it hard.
Yeah. Yeah, the last time I traveled, I haven't traveled since I retired my service dog. Um, so I'm not sure. I mean, she did a lot for me in terms of traveling, right? Because one, she watched my back and she kept my sugars in range. You know, the last flight I was on was a direct flight from Pittsburgh to LA. And she's the reason the plane didn't have to touch down and fly over country to get me in a hospital because my sugar was, oh goodness, it took so many glasses of orange juice to keep me from crashing.
Wow.
And you know, whoever, you never know why. It
Yeah.
just, it does what it does. But you know, not only does she have my back physically, but just focused on her and her well-being within that airport experience, you know, really distracts you from the bombardment
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
stimuli and everything else. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not looking forward to traveling alone. But I've
No,
retired her, so I don't think I'd put her through it at this age. She's 11 now. So
oh yeah.
I wouldn't put her through it.
Yeah, my girl will
But
be 10 this year.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So
then like a mention of some of the other things that I'm doing. I work at a nearby. Did I freeze again?
you did.
Okay.
It showed on my face, huh?
Yeah, I work at a yoga studio nearby, and I'm doing a book club with them right now. So
Okay.
Brene Brown is an author. She has a book called Atlas of the Heart, and it goes through 87 different human emotions. So I'm really big on emotional literacy,
Yeah.
like learning the language of the emotions, learning how that feels in our body,
Yeah.
learning how we can feel safe to sit with the emotions, and then gaining the emotional literacy so that we can have clear as kind, she says, clearer communication with other people around us, to instead of having those big outbursts like
Yeah. Yeah.
FASD people tend towards.
Well, and that's one of our struggles for a great many of us is not having the words for
Yeah.
what those big feelings are, and being more intellectual maybe than we are feeling. You know, is something many others of us have. So I mean, it can be quite challenging. That sounds like a wonderful book.
It's such a good book. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. So let me put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
So the Atlas of the Heart.
Atlas of the Heart. Yeah.
I'm going to put that. I have Post-it notes on my computer.
Yeah. Love those Post-it notes.
I'm going to add it there. Yeah, Brene is terrific.
Oh gosh, she is.
Okay. All right. So cool. And how have you seen the impact of what you're learning about that? How has that trickled out?
Oh my gosh. It's been incredible. First of all, with my own family, I was having like those, those big emotional explosions, and it never feels good. Like it doesn't feel good on either side, but it definitely doesn't feel good on the receiving end when someone is just lashing out at you.
Yeah.
And so I live with my parents, my dad and my stepmom. So our like household communication has gotten so much better. We don't have big blowouts anymore, like literally at all.
Good.
I'm able to say now, like, okay, I just need to step away for a second, and then I can come back to things.
Mhm.
My parents are getting better at that as well. In this group that I'm facilitating, I've had some people come up to me and say that they were able to kids that they never thought they'd be able to have. And so, did I freeze again?
Not for very long, but so what, you know, on my end, this is confabulation, right? Filling in the blanks. So, in the group, you've had people come up to you and say they've been able to experience things that they didn't think they would.
They've been able to have conversations with their kids, their husbands, that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to have, because they now have the language to go with the feeling.
Yeah.
And that is what I call emotional literacy.
Yeah. That's awesome. So that's definitely going to go in the show notes. I think I may add it to the list of recommended reading on my website as well.
Oh, definitely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And because some people are so intuitive, they may not have the language, but they can sense, right? And then other people just don't. That's just so underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I absolutely think that comes straight from the broken systems that hold us. Like, we don't learn emotional literacy in public school. They do in other countries. They learn compassion and empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have time for that here.
Yeah. We don't have time for a lot of things that are so important, right? Like we do away with recess.
Yeah.
When movement and social interaction is what our kids need the most, developmentally, with or without neurodivergence.
Yeah.
But especially for those of us who are wired differently, we absolutely need that opportunity to move and clear some of the junk out. Right.
Most definitely.
Yeah. There's a lot of shortfalls in our system. I think, it may have started off well and good, but somewhere it went astray.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
And we can all see who it's benefiting.
Yeah. Okay. And I really would challenge that though, because it's really not benefiting anybody, because when our kids' needs are not getting met, then
well, it's benefiting people who can afford extra help, the people who can afford tutors, the people who can afford extracurriculars.
Yeah.
And it's not benefiting the people who are just stuck in the system.
Yeah. But overall, it's hurting society. Is my point. It's why I would say I would challenge that. I mean, it's looking at the short-sighted benefit, or the very, micro system benefit, but really this is a macro issue. It's a larger world issue. So, okay. So what are your thoughts toward FASD and addictions, just in general? It's certainly a way of self-medicating. And do you think it's just that we have more to self-medicate? Do you think it's like, for your own self, how much do you think was you were predisposed to it from your genetic and epigenetic background versus just all the turmoil of being, adverse childhood experiences?
Yeah. I think that might be an impossible question.
Right? As it came out of my mouth, I'm like, yeah, how do you tease that apart?
Yeah. And I would say, maybe it's less important to tease that apart as it is to deal with the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But although, I did have to learn why I was self-medicating.
Mm-hmm.
Even getting in touch with those feelings has been incredibly uncomfortable. There's so much shame and so much blame in the stories around the addiction I've experienced. So many like cringe memories that like I don't even want to dive back into.
Yeah.
But ultimately I can look back and see that I had an idea of what a successful person looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked like the life of the party.
Mm-hmm.
The person that everybody always wanted to talk to, the person that held everybody up. And alcohol let me be that person.
Okay.
And I know now that that's not my authentic self. My authentic self is rather introverted.
Okay.
And have you heard of the spoon theory?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people in our audience may not have. So
right. So for anybody listening, I definitely recommend Googling the spoon theory. It was a woman with lupus who decided to use spoons as basically, and other people might have unlimited spoons in a day or 100 spoons in a day, but we might only have 5 or 6 spoons in a day. And we have to be really intentional about the way that we're using our spoons. And so I used to feel like alcohol gave me spoons.
mm-hmm.
And I even noticed it like when I was away on the weekend and I was getting ready to go out in the evening, which I don't normally do anymore. Like I'm normally in bed very early. I even thought to myself, like, man, like a drink would be nice to give me a little bit of like oomph to get going. And then I was like, oh, maybe my like true self doesn't want to be going at all. And I didn't enjoy myself. And that's not something that I would do again, is like go to it was like a pretty late comedy show. Yeah, I think I got off topic.
We're talking about spoons
And
and having to guard them as a resource.
Oh my gosh,
yes.
Yeah,
this goes back to the battery image.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Where we do have a finite amount of energy, and there are some things that will replenish that battery or give us more spoons, and that's self-care, right?
Yeah.
Eating properly, eating nutritiously, hydrating enough, getting enough rest, which is not necessarily sleep. And and being self-compassionate, all those things can fill our cup, right? I think it's hard to, there's so many different analogies for the same principles. And it can be hard to kind of figure out and learn about ourselves, what kinds of activities will take how many spoons away, or will give us how many extra resources that we need. So Yeah. Okay. So we'll not tease that ball apart, right? To figure out how much of it is genetic versus how much of it is just all the environmental, right? Um, but it is true that those of us with FASD, we tend to have more adverse childhood experiences than most. And as to no surprise, those who have adverse childhood experiences tend to have more FASD than the general population. It's like it's a cycle.
The Ouroboros. What is the eats its own tail?
Yeah. Yeah. So, excuse me. So, and I just, my thoughts just derailed on that one.
Okay.
I think we're both, neither one of us are at 100% today.
No, I'm definitely not.
But I'll definitely want to have you back, Shannon, again. So, because this has been a delightful conversation, and I'm hoping it's something that, a lot of the listeners or viewers can really identify with, because alcohol and cocaine and marijuana are not the only things that can trip us up with addictions.
No, not at all.
Many of us use food
as
an addictive
exercise, work, porn, sex, gambling, relationships, shopping. It's sugar. It's sugar. It's not just it's not just booze and weed and
yeah. So that's definitely something I think we can probably spend more time talking about in a future episode.
Absolutely.
And I'm just so delighted that you reached out to me.
Yes.
So so for the viewers and listeners, if you're living with FASD and you want to be on an episode of Living with FASD, then, give me a jingle. So you can reach out to me at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com. You can join the Facebook group with the name of the show is the name of the group. So Living with FASD Podcast. You can also reach out to me on my website, which is patriciacasper.com. And just reach out if you have an idea for a topic that you want to learn more about. I will try and figure out who to ask on the show to have that discussion. If you want to share your experiences living with FASD, come on. We will be glad to sit down and have a candid conversation. So, Shannon, how can people reach you? If they want to get in touch with you, if they want to find out what the ALC is doing in Ontario, what kinds of, where they might be able to find you or listen to you.
I am on Instagram. My Instagram is Outcast Alley. That's OUTKASTALLEY. My website is outcastalley.com. And the ALC, the Changemakers are also on Instagram. I'm not sure of their website. But if you find them on Instagram, then their website link is right there.
Okay. Well, and certainly I love that Outcast is with a K. I mean, look at my name. Casper's with a K.
Yes, I like that.
It's the designer, not the ghost. So, again, thank you for reaching out to me, and it has been delightful having this conversation with you. And I hope that readers will chime in with, leave comments either on the YouTube channel that hosts this or the Spotify address. You can leave comments either place, but or ask questions or whatever else. So thank you for bringing up this incredibly sensitive topic, right?
Yes.
Because there is a lot of shame around it. But it's a very real part of what a lot of us struggle with. So
thank you so much for having me.
thank you for your bravery in wanting to share your story so publicly. So you inspire me, Shannon.
Likewise, Patty.
So, all right. Well, everybody, that I cannot believe another episode has wrapped up so quickly. Tune in next Monday for another Candid Conversation. Again, you can reach out at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com or the Facebook group Living with FASD Podcast. So take care, everyone, and we'll see you next Monday for another Candid Conversation.